In the fall of 1977, a young rookie police officer, just 22, put on her uniform for what should have been a normal night shift. She was full of hope, proud, ready to serve her small town. But that night, she never came home. Her patrol car was found abandoned on a lonely road. Her radio was dead. Her hat sat on the seat, but she was gone. No footprints, no struggle, nothing to explain her disappearance. For decades, her family lived in fear and uncertainty. Had she been taken? Was it a crime of revenge, or something even darker? Every lead ended in silence, every question unanswered. Then, 26 years later, a hunter in the woods uncovered something buried in the dirt. At first, it looked like junk, but when investigators saw the serial number, they froze. It was her service gun, and what they uncovered next would shatter the small town's sense of safety and finally expose the shocking truth of that fateful night. You won't believe what really happened. Watch the full story now on our channel and comment below where you're watching this from. We want to hear from you. She grew up in a small town where everybody knew each other. The kind of place where the grocery clerk knew your family name and neighbors waved when you drove by. Life was simple, but for her, simple wasn't enough. Even as a kid, she wanted something bigger. She wanted to serve, to protect, and to wear the uniform. Her parents were proud but also nervous. Their daughter wasn't like most of her friends. While others dreamed of college or moving away, she dreamed of joining the police. She talked about it constantly. She watched officers on patrol and said, "That will be me one day." By high school, she had already set her path. She volunteered at community events, helped elderly neighbors, and even joined a ride-along with a local cop. Everyone could see her determination. She wasn't chasing excitement. She truly believed being an officer meant helping people. When she finally graduated, she skipped the usual routes her classmates took. She went straight into training. It was tough, long hours, strict instructors, endless drills, but she never gave up. She wanted the badge more than anything else. The day she was sworn in was unforgettable. Her parents stood in the crowd, clapping with tears in their eyes. The town newspaper even covered it, running her photo with a headline, "Small Town Girl Becomes Rookie Officer." People in town stopped her parents at the store just to congratulate them. For a moment, it felt like she had achieved everything she dreamed of. She was young, hopeful, and finally part of the force. But no one knew what was coming. This proud beginning, the dreams, the excitement, the promise, would soon turn into a nightmare. Her first weeks as a rookie were not glamorous. She made mistakes, small ones, but they weighed on her. She fumbled with the radio, missed details in her reports, and sometimes froze when senior officers barked orders. Still, she never gave up. Every night she reminded herself she was learning. She told her parents, "I'll get better. I just have to prove I can handle this." Her fellow officers noticed her effort. Some teased her for being nervous. Others encouraged her, saying they had all been rookies once. She smiled, even when it was hard, because she didn't want anyone to doubt her. The shifts were long and exhausting. She worked nights, driving empty streets, checking alleys, and pulling over suspicious cars. At times, fear crept in. She was young, small compared to most officers, and alone in a patrol car. But she pushed the fear aside. She wanted respect. She wanted to show her town and herself that she could be trusted with the badge. Each mistake she made became a lesson. Each challenge became fuel. She wrote extra notes in her notebook, studied procedure, and practiced radio codes until she could repeat them in her sleep. By the end of her first month, her confidence started to grow. She was no longer the scared rookie hiding behind senior officers. She was learning to stand tall, to act with authority, and to carry the weight of the badge. But even as she settled in, the pressure never went away. She was the youngest on the force, and in a small town, everybody was watching. And soon, she would face a night where nerves, mistakes, and inexperience would no longer matter, because the danger would be real. Wearing the uniform changed everything. For some townspeople, seeing her in it brought pride. They said it was inspiring to see a young woman step into such a tough role. Parents told their daughters, "Look at her, you can be anything you want." But not everyone felt that way. Some whispered she was too young, too inexperienced, too small to handle real danger. There were old men at diners who shook their heads and said, "That girl won't last 6 months." She heard the whispers, and they stung, but instead of breaking her down, they drove her harder. She worked extra shifts. She took the toughest calls. She wanted to silence the doubts with action. Every night, as she put on her uniform, she looked in the mirror and reminded herself, she earned this badge, and no one was going to take it away. Her presence stood out at traffic stops and on late-night patrols. Drivers did double takes, surprised to see someone so young, so determined behind the badge. Kids waved at her patrol car. Older residents studied her carefully, some with doubt, others with pride. She understood the weight of every stare. Every stop, every call was a chance to prove she belonged. And every night she reminded herself, mistakes were behind her, this was her future. What no one realized was how little time she had left to prove it. Inside the department, she quickly found mentors. One older officer near retirement treated her like a daughter. He gave her advice, corrected her mistakes gently, and told her stories from decades on the job. She listened closely, eager to learn from every word. Another officer, only a few years older than her, became more like a big brother. He teased her during slow nights, but he always had her back. He reminded her to stay sharp, to never underestimate a call, and to always trust her gut. These friendships gave her strength. Being the youngest and one of the only women on the force wasn't easy, but with allies beside her, she felt less alone. Still, not everyone welcomed her. A few officers doubted she could handle herself. They gave her skeptical looks, watched her closely, waiting for her to slip up. She noticed, but instead of shrinking away, she doubled her efforts. She volunteered for tough assignments. She asked endless questions. She stayed late after shifts, reviewing reports and learning every detail of the cases. She wanted them to see she was serious, that she belonged. At roll call, she stood tall. At crime scenes, she pushed herself forward even when her heart pounded. Slowly, respect began to build, not from everyone, but from enough. She knew she was winning them over. For her, the department wasn't just a job, it was a family. And like any family, she wanted to be accepted. She wanted to be trusted. Those bonds she built would become painfully important later, because when she vanished, those same officers would be the ones searching for her in the dark, refusing to give up. Back at home, her family lived in two worlds. On one side, they were bursting with pride. Their daughter had done something incredible. She had beaten the odds, earned the badge, and was protecting the same streets she once rode her bike down. Her parents clipped newspaper articles, framed her academy graduation photo, and told everyone they knew. But underneath that pride was fear, real fear. They knew police work was dangerous. Every time she left the house in uniform, her mother's smile masked a quiet dread. Her father tried to act calm, but he stared at the clock when she worked late shifts. They worried about drunk drivers, violent suspects, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. They had seen news stories of officers killed in the line of duty. They never thought their daughter would face that risk. Now it was real. She reassured them constantly. "Don't worry, I'll be fine," she said with a grin. She wanted to ease their fear, but deep down she knew the risks too. Her family's pride was real, so was their worry. And soon their worst nightmare would come true. It was a quiet evening in 1977. At the station, the rookie officer went through the same routine she had learned in training. She checked in at roll call, standing with the other officers, notebook in hand. Nothing about the night felt unusual. After briefing, she walked out to the lot where her patrol car waited. She opened the door, checked her lights, tested the siren for a second, and made sure her radio was working. Every step was routine. She had done it dozens of times. She clipped her badge to her uniform, adjusted her belt, and ran through her mental checklist. Flashlight, loaded, notepad, ready, sidearm, secure. Everything was in place. Before heading out, she radioed dispatch. Her voice was steady, confident. She was learning the rhythm of the job, learning how to sound like a seasoned cop instead of a nervous rookie. To her, this was just another night on patrol, another chance to prove herself. But no one in that station knew what was coming. No one realized that as she climbed into her cruiser and drove off into the dark, It would be the last time her fellow officers ever saw her alive. The sun had set and the small town was settling into another quiet night. At the station, the rookie officer followed her usual routine. She double-checked her gear, flashlight, notebook, sidearm, and radio. She tested her patrol car's lights and made sure the engine was running smoothly. When she was ready, she grabbed the mic and called dispatch. Her voice came through steady and calm. "Unit 4 on patrol." The dispatcher replied, logging her into the night's shift. Nothing about her tone hinted at nerves. She sounded like she belonged. She pulled out of the lot and rolled onto the streets. The town was still. A few bars had cars parked outside. Gas stations glowed under buzzing lights. Families were inside their homes, doors locked, kids asleep. It was the kind of night every officer hoped for, quiet, uneventful. Her job was to circle the neighborhoods, check on empty lots, and make sure no trouble was brewing. She kept her eyes moving, watching shadows, scanning alleys. Every stoplight, every corner, she stayed alert. To anyone watching, it looked routine. Just a young officer in a patrol car doing her job. She couldn't know that tonight would not end like the others. Around 11:30 p.m., she spotted a car ahead driving strangely. Its speed wavered, too fast, then too slow. She flipped on her lights. The red and blue flashed across the empty road. The car pulled over to the side. She radioed dispatch, "Traffic stop Main and River Road." Her voice was calm, steady, just like she had been trained. Dispatch acknowledged. She stepped out of her cruiser. The night air was cool, the road silent except for the ticking of engines. She approached the car carefully, shining her flashlight inside. What was said between her and the driver has never been fully known. To passing cars, it looked normal. An officer doing her job, a driver waiting. Nothing seemed out of place. But that moment would become chilling, because it was the last confirmed time anyone ever saw her. She returned to her cruiser, reported the stop, and began filling out details. But after that, silence. The stop that looked so routine would become the final clue. No one knew it yet, but she was about to vanish. Minutes later, dispatch tried to reach her. A call went out. "Unit 4 status check." No answer. They tried again. Still silence. At first, they thought maybe she was busy writing a ticket or handling a driver who needed extra questions. That wasn't unusual. But as the minutes stretched on, the silence became heavy. Radios are never silent for long. Officers always check in, always answer. Confusion turned into unease. Another call went out. "Unit 4 respond." Still nothing. By now, dispatch alerted nearby units. Fellow officers drove toward her last known location, scanning the roads. Their headlights cut across empty fields and dark intersections. But her voice never came back. The quiet night had shifted into something else, fear. Something was wrong. When backup arrived at the roadside, their headlights cut through the dark. And then they saw it, her cruiser. It was still running. The engine hummed quietly. The red and blue lights flashed against the trees, but the car was empty. One officer walked closer, calling her name. No answer. He opened the driver's side door. On the seat sat her police hat. Next to it, her radio. Both should have been with her. He checked the ground with his flashlight. No signs of a struggle. No footprints leading away. Nothing broken. It was like she had simply stepped out of the car and vanished. The silence was crushing. Officers searched the area, calling her name again and again. No reply, no movement. A uniformed officer missing on duty was something none of them had ever seen before, and the feeling that swept over them was dread. Back at the station, word spread fast. Radios buzzed with urgent voices. Supervisors barked orders. Officers grabbed flashlights, rifles, and maps. Everyone felt it, panic. She was one of their own, a rookie they had watched grow in the job. And now her car sat abandoned with no sign of her. Some officers stormed out the doors, desperate to search the woods and fields. Others stayed behind, trying to piece together her last calls. Every second felt like it mattered. One young officer, also a rookie, broke down crying. The thought of losing a partner in uniform was too much. Veterans tried to steady him, but their own faces showed fear. Supervisors whispered the unthinkable. Was she ambushed, kidnapped, killed? A missing civilian was bad enough, but a missing cop, that was a nightmare no one wanted to believe. Phones rang, dispatch lit up. The department knew this wasn't just another call. This was history in the making, and not in a good way. By morning, the town knew. News spread from house to house, store to store. A police officer was missing. Her car had been found, but not her. Families locked their doors. Some kept their kids home from school. In diners and shops, people whispered in disbelief. "How can a cop just disappear?" one man asked, shaking his head. Neighbors swapped theories. Some said she must have run away. Others were sure she was taken. Nobody agreed, but everyone felt the same thing: fear. The sight of her empty cruiser haunted people. If a trained officer, armed and in uniform, could vanish without a sound, then no one was truly safe. What began as a quiet night patrol had now shaken an entire community. And this was only the beginning. As hours turned into days, the case twisted into mystery. No officer had ever vanished like this before, and with no answers, people started building their own. Some whispered that she had run away. Maybe the stress of the badge was too much, they said. Maybe she wanted to escape the pressure, but her family refused to believe it. She loved the job. She wanted to prove herself. Running didn't fit. Others pointed to revenge. She had pulled over plenty of drivers. Could one of them have waited for the right moment? Could someone she had arrested have come back to hurt her? The most chilling theory was betrayal. Some said maybe she knew her attacker. Maybe it wasn't a stranger at all. Inside the department, no one dared speak it out loud. But in quiet moments, some officers wondered, what if someone close to her had a hand in it? Theories piled up, but evidence was nowhere. Within hours of finding her empty patrol car, the department knew this was bigger than anything they had handled before. A missing person was urgent. A missing officer was an emergency. Supervisors made the call. Radios crackled as alerts went out across the county. All available units respond. Departments from nearby towns joined in. Deputies left their posts. Highway patrol officers shifted routes. Even off-duty cops threw on uniforms and rushed to help. The word spread fast. An officer was gone. No one hesitated. Police set up a command post. Maps were unrolled on tables. Markers circled her last known location. Radios buzzed with updates. Every officer knew the mission: find her. Local media picked up the story. Reporters repeated the same shocking words. A rookie officer has disappeared while on duty. For families watching at home, it didn't feel real. Soon, townsfolk began calling in. Some offered food. Others offered to help search. For many, this officer wasn't just a badge, she was their neighbor, their friend's daughter, the girl they saw grow up. By midnight, the small-town police force had become a massive operation. Officers, deputies, volunteers, all moving for the same goal. But despite the growing army of searchers, one chilling truth hung over everyone. They had no idea where to look. By sunrise, the search was in full swing. Dozens of volunteers lined up beside officers, ready to cover every inch of ground. Men carried lanterns. Women held flashlights. Search dogs barked, straining at their leashes. Deputies spread out in lines, combing through tall grass, tree lines, and ditches. Every command shouted felt urgent. Check the barns, look under those bridges, scan the riverbank. The woods echoed with voices calling her name. Sometimes it sounded hopeful, like maybe she would answer back. But each time the only reply was silence. Farmers joined with tractors pushing through fields. Families with kids searched roadsides. No one wanted to believe that an officer, armed and in uniform, could vanish without a single clue. As night fell again, flashlights cut through the dark. Hundreds of tiny beams swept across the land, back and forth, refusing to stop. But hour after hour there was nothing. No shoe prints, no broken grass, no dropped weapon, no blood. The ground was empty, like she had never been there at all. The next step was the air. Helicopters were called in from the state police. By evening, their rotors thundered above the woods. Spotlights scanned the ground below. White beams cut across fields, through neighborhoods and deep into forests. From the air, every shadow looked suspicious. Searchers on the ground waved up at the lights, hoping something would finally show. At times, the pilots circled areas where they thought they saw movement, but when officers reached the spots, nothing, just trees, animals, or shadows. The longer the helicopters searched, the more frustrating it became. The lights revealed everything except her. When the aircraft finally pulled back to refuel, the reality hit hard. An officer had disappeared into thin air, and not even helicopters could find her. When daylight returned, officers brought in K-9 units. The dogs were trained for one thing, tracking human scent. Handlers led them to her abandoned patrol car. Each dog sniffed around the door, the seat, and the hat left inside. Then, with sudden focus, the dogs pulled hard on their leashes, heading toward the tree line. Searchers followed close behind. The trail cut into the woods, winding through branches and thick brush. The dogs moved with certainty, noses pressed low, tails stiff. Everyone held their breath. For the first time since she vanished, it felt like progress. The dogs had her scent. They were leading the way. But then, without warning, it stopped. The animals circled in confusion. They sniffed the ground, then looked up at their handlers. The scent was gone, like it had been cut off. Officers pressed forward, hoping the trail would pick up again. But nothing. It was as if she had stepped into the woods and then simply disappeared. The silence among the team was heavy. A living, breathing officer could not just vanish. And yet, that was exactly what it looked like. While search teams scoured the woods, her family stepped in front of cameras. Her father, a proud but broken man, stood stiff in his best shirt. His voice cracked as he begged, "Please, if anyone knows anything, bring our daughter home." Her mother sat beside him, clutching a tissue. She looked straight into the camera and pleaded, "We just want her safe. We just want to see her again." Her siblings, younger and terrified, couldn't hold back tears. Their faces told the story of a family ripped open by fear. Across town, televisions played the broadcast. Neighbors stopped what they were doing. In living rooms, diners, and stores, people watched in silence. The words weren't just for strangers. They were for whoever had taken her, if anyone had. The family's message was simple, desperate, and clear: bring her back. With no answers and no body, the town began to eat itself alive with rumors. Some whispered that she had a secret boyfriend. Maybe she had run away with him. Maybe the stress of the badge was too heavy. Others believed she had been targeted. She had been pulling cars over at night, working alone. Was it possible she stopped the wrong person, someone dangerous who wanted revenge? And then there were darker whispers. Some townsfolk said maybe it wasn't a stranger at all. Maybe she knew her attacker. Maybe someone inside the department was involved. Every coffee shop, every diner, every church meeting carried the same hushed debates. People took sides. Some defended her as loyal and brave. Others wondered if she had broken under pressure. The police tried to control the story, but the silence left space for suspicion. And suspicion spread like fire. Tips flooded in. People swore they had seen her walking down highways in nearby towns, even across state lines. Every lead brought hope. Every time, detectives followed. And every time, it ended the same way: nothing. A farmer claimed he heard screams in the night. Searchers swept his fields. Nothing. A driver said he saw a woman in uniform near a gas station. Investigators pulled the tapes. It wasn't her. Someone mailed in a letter claiming to know where her body was buried. Officers dug the ground. Empty. Each false lead drained the department. Detectives grew sharp with reporters, angry with volunteers, and frustrated with themselves. Weeks into the search, every promising clue had collapsed. And the truth was worse than no leads. Every wrong turn was wasted time. Time they could never get back. As weeks turned into months, the energy of the search began to fade. Volunteers returned to work. Helicopters stopped flying. Even some officers admitted quietly what no one wanted to say: murder. The word crept into conversations late at night. It appeared in headlines disguised as foul play. It was whispered in the grocery store aisles, at the post office, at school pickup lines. Her parents still held on to hope. Every night they left a light on, waiting for her to walk through the door. But the light began to feel more like a symbol than a plan. By the end of the year, the case was cold. No suspect, no motive, no body. The rookie officer who had started her dream job had vanished. and the trail of her life stopped dead in 1977. Her parents never moved her things. Her childhood bedroom stayed exactly as it was the last day she left. Posters on the wall, clothes in the closet, a half-read book on the nightstand. At first, they believed she would walk through the door any day. They kept her bed made, waiting for her. They set a place for her at the dinner table on holidays. They refused to let the world erase her. As the years passed, neighbors noticed the same porch light was always left on. It became a symbol in town, the light that waited for a daughter who never came home. But time was cruel. Her parents aged. Their hair turned gray, their hands shook, yet they still kept her memory alive. Every birthday they baked a cake. Every anniversary of her disappearance, they stood in front of reporters and begged for answers. To them, she was not gone. She was just missing, waiting to be found. Her fellow officers carried a weight that never left them. Many retired with one story they could not forget: the rookie who vanished on duty. They replayed that night in their minds. Could they have checked on her sooner? Could they have sent backup earlier? Did they ignore a clue sitting right in front of them? One officer admitted privately that he never forgave himself. He had waved at her car the night she vanished, not knowing it would be the last time. Another said he often woke from nightmares, hearing silence on the radio. When young recruits joined the force, the older cops told her story as a warning: never let your guard down. It happened once. It can happen again. She was more than a missing officer. She became a ghost in the department, a reminder of guilt and unanswered questions. Every year the calendar brought back the date, the day she disappeared. Local papers printed the same photo of her in uniform. The headline never changed: still missing. Her family organized vigils in the town square. At first, dozens came: friends, neighbors, officers. They lit candles, said prayers, and promised never to forget. But as the years stretched into decades, the crowds grew smaller. Reporters stopped showing up. The vigils became quiet circles of family members standing in the cold, holding on to hope that looked weaker with each passing year. The anniversary became a painful ritual, a reminder not of her life, but of her absence. For the town, she was no longer just the rookie officer. She was the mystery that haunted them, a hole in their history that no one could fill. As the years passed, her story changed in the town's memory. Facts blurred. Whispers replaced truth. Kids who hadn't even been born in 1977 grew up hearing the same tale: the rookie cop who vanished in uniform. Some repeated it like a ghost story, others like a cautionary lesson. In diners, older folks told newcomers, "That's the road where the patrol car was found." They said it in hushed tones, like the place itself was cursed. Her name stayed alive, but not in the way her family wanted. She was no longer remembered as the young woman who loved her job. She became a mystery, a shadow in the town's history. Some locals swore she had been kidnapped. Others believed she was buried in the woods. A few even claimed she had run away and started over. No one knew, but everyone remembered. For her parents, time did not heal. It only deepened the wound. Her mother grew frail, her hair turning white, but she still kept her daughter's room untouched. She dusted the dresser, folded the same clothes, and sat quietly in the doorway at night. Her father tried to stay strong. He mowed the lawn, fixed the porch, and smiled when neighbors asked about the case. But inside, he was crumbling. Holidays became unbearable. Thanksgiving dinner always had an empty chair. Christmas gifts went unopened, stacked in the corner of her room. They held on to hope, but it was hope with cracks. Each passing year was another year stolen, another birthday with no candles blown out, another anniversary with no answers. They aged, but their daughter stayed frozen in time, forever young, forever missing. 5 years passed, 10, 15, 20. For the town, life went on. Children grew up, jobs changed, streets were repaved. But for her family, time was frozen. Every day was a reminder of the night she disappeared. Friends drifted away. Neighbors stopped asking questions. The vigils became smaller, then almost non-existent, yet her parents remained. They still left the light on in her bedroom. They still set a place at the table for her during holidays. Every passing year felt like a small defeat. The world around them moved on, but they could not. Every birthday, every anniversary, Every local newspaper headline reminded them that she had vanished without a trace. Even her fellow officers aged. Some retired quietly, haunted by memories and what-ifs. Some stayed in touch with her parents, offering support that could never replace the daughter they lost. 2 decades became a long, empty tunnel. They hoped for answers, but the walls only echoed silence. By the early 2000s, the story had turned into a ghost in the town. Most people assumed the truth would never be uncovered. The rookie officer was no longer part of daily life. She existed only in whispers and news archives. Families told her story to their children like a cautionary tale. New residents heard about the vanished cop and shivered. But the urgency, the hope, the desperate search, it had faded. Even her parents began to fear that the answer would never come. They had waited decades. They had hoped for miracles that never arrived. The case had become a ghost story, but for them, it was painfully real. It was early morning in 2003. The hunter grabbed his jacket, checked his boots, and stepped into the forest. He had hunted these woods for years. Deer, rabbits, wild turkeys, it was all familiar. He knew every trail, every clearing. Today felt no different. He moved slowly, scanning the ground, ears alert to birds, squirrels, the snap of twigs. Sunlight filtered through the branches, casting moving patterns on the dirt. The forest was quiet, peaceful, until something caught his eye. But at first, he didn't notice anything unusual, just another morning walk in the woods. He followed a narrow path, moving deeper where few people ever went. Birds scattered as he passed. The air smelled of damp leaves and pine. Routine, ordinary, uneventful. He had no idea that in this familiar forest, under his feet, a clue had been waiting for 26 years. A piece of a story no one had solved. Every step brought him closer. Every footfall pushed the forest floor aside. It was just another hunt, or at least that's what he thought. As he crossed a small clearing, something glinted faintly beneath a pile of leaves and loose soil. At first he thought it was trash, maybe a soda can or a piece of old scrap metal. Hunters see metal all the time. Broken tools, old nails, discarded objects. But this glint made him pause. It wasn't shiny new metal. It had a dull, dark surface corroded with age. He crouched closer, brushing away leaves with his gloved hands. He turned it, examining the shape. It looked like part of a gun. His heart started to beat faster. Could it be real? After so many years, could this forgotten object be something important? He looked around. The clearing was empty, no signs of anyone else. Just him, the trees, and the metal sticking out of the dirt. The curiosity was too strong. He knew he had to see what it really was. He knelt down and started digging carefully. Each handful of dirt made the metal more visible. Slowly he uncovered a shape that was unmistakable, a rusted handgun. Heavy, corroded, but still intact. The trigger guard was bent, the surface pitted with years of exposure. He lifted it from the soil. It felt solid in his hands, though worn by time. He stared at it, realizing the weight it carried, not just physically but in history. For 26 years, no one had touched this gun. No one had found it. And now, suddenly, it was in his hands. His mind raced. Could this be from the officer who vanished decades ago? The patrol car, the empty hat, the silence that haunted the town. Could this be the first real clue in the long cold case? He carefully wrapped the weapon in his jacket and made his way back to the truck. Every step felt heavy. He knew he had found something that could change everything. When he called the police, he didn't know exactly what he had uncovered, but he understood it was important. Somehow, this rusty, old gun would reopen a story that had been frozen for more than a quarter of a century. Back at the edge of the clearing, the hunter knelt on the dirt. He carefully brushed away layers of grime and rust with his gloves. At first, the metal seemed like any old piece of junk, but then he noticed faint etchings along the side of the gun. Numbers. He wiped harder, squinting in the sunlight. The numbers became clearer, official markings. Not a discarded weapon, not something left from a hunter. This was issued. His heart pounded. A standard patrol gun. Could it really belong to the missing officer from 1977? The realization made him step back. This wasn't just rusted metal. This was evidence. For 26 years, no one had touched it. No one had seen it. And now it stared back at him, quiet, corroded, but screaming its story. He looked around. The forest was empty, no footprints, no clue to who had put it there, just the gun lying in the dirt waiting. He carefully wrapped it in his jacket, cradling it like it was fragile. Every step he took toward the truck felt heavier. He knew this small, corroded piece of metal could reopen a case frozen for decades. The hunter understood the weight of his find. This gun wasn't junk. It was a link to the past, and it would not stay silent for long. The hunter drove carefully to the nearest town. His hands shook slightly as he spoke to the dispatcher. I found a gun," he said. He explained where it was. The dispatcher's voice was calm but urgent. "We're sending officers right away. Stay there." Within minutes, patrol cars arrived. Uniformed officers stepped out, scanning the forest edges. They approached him cautiously, asking questions, taking notes, but their eyes were on the jacketed bundle in his hands. The officers handled the gun with care, placing it in an evidence bag. Every movement was precise, professional. This wasn't just any weapon. It was potentially a piece of a decades-old mystery. One detective pulled the hunter aside, asking him to recount exactly where he found it. Maps were marked, photos taken. The forest, quiet and still, suddenly felt like a crime scene frozen in time. The hunter watched as the officers carefully loaded the gun for transport. He realized that this ordinary morning hunt had just changed the course of a case that had been cold for more than a quarter of a century. He left the scene, heart racing, knowing that the missing officer's story was about to be reopened. Days later, the gun was in the hands of forensic experts. They examined it carefully, comparing every marking, every scratch, every serial number. When the numbers matched the department's records, the room went silent. It was hers, the missing rookie officer's service weapon, no doubt, no mistake. For 26 years, the gun had been lost to the world. Now it was back, confirming what everyone had feared but never proven. This was real. The discovery sent shockwaves through the department. Officers who had retired, families who had waited decades, everyone knew that the cold case had just become very, very real again. Immediately, questions erupted. Why had the gun been buried here, deep in the woods, far from her patrol route? Had she been killed nearby, or was the weapon moved to mislead anyone who might search? Who could have hidden it, and why wait 26 years? Detectives interviewed locals, former colleagues, anyone who might have information. Rumors resurfaced, old suspicions came alive, and new theories formed. The discovery reopened every painful question. The officer's family felt a mix of fear and hope. Could this finally lead to the truth, or would it just deepen the mystery? For the town, the vanished rookie was no longer just a ghost story. Evidence had returned to the light, demanding answers long overdue. The moment the gun's serial number confirmed it belonged to the missing officer, the police returned to the woods. Forensic teams arrived with shovels, metal detectors, and evidence bags. They started at the exact spot where the hunter had found the weapon. Every layer of dirt was examined. Trees and roots were carefully scanned. Officers called out anything unusual. K-9 units were brought back, searching for scents from decades ago. Their noses led them through the undergrowth, but the trail stopped again. They dug deeper, hopping for a bone, a piece of clothing, anything that could confirm what had happened. Every inch of the clearing was marked, photographed, and catalogued. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began to drop, but nothing emerged. Not a clue, not a fragment, not even a hint. Detectives stood quietly, staring at the empty ground. The forest was the same, peaceful and quiet, hiding secrets from the past. Even with the gun in evidence, the scene offered no answers, just the same haunting silence that had plagued the town for 26 years. It was a reminder that the case was far from solved, and that someone had gone to great lengths to bury both the weapon and the truth. Back at the station, investigators began reviewing the original case files. Dusty boxes from 1977 were pulled from storage. Reports, timelines, witness statements, they all needed a second look. New detectives scanned the handwriting, cross-checking names and addresses. Old officers added notes they had never recorded. Every small detail was analyzed. A missed phone call, an overlooked tip, a description that didn't match. The new team brought modern thinking to old evidence. They discussed motives, timelines, and possible suspects. What seemed minor in 1977 now looked more important. Detectives compared reports from different witnesses, looking for inconsistencies. They highlighted suspects who had been overlooked. They noted details that had never been matched with physical evidence. For the first time in decades, the case felt alive. The files told the story of a rookie officer, her last patrol, and the unanswered questions that followed. Every page reminded them how much time had passed and how little had been solved. By the end of the day, the investigators had a fresh picture forming. They knew the gun was a key piece, but they still needed more. Detectives began tracking down men who had been questioned decades ago. Some had moved away. Some had aged, retired, or changed their names. When the interviews began, reactions were mixed. A few answered calmly, almost relieved that the case was being looked at again. Others grew defensive, their voices sharp, their eyes wary. One man remembered the night vividly. Another claimed he had nothing to do with it. Some tried to dodge questions, while others volunteered small details they had never shared. Every conversation created tension. Detectives watched body language closely, noting hesitation or sudden changes in tone. Old suspects could be hiding decades-old guilt or decades-old fear. Each interview added pieces to the puzzle. Names, locations, and timelines were compared to the evidence and the gun's location. Detectives began to see patterns emerging, threads that had been invisible before. The pressure mounted. For the first time in 26 years, the case felt closer to being solved. But the truth was still out there, buried, waiting for the next break to connect everything together. During one interview, a retired officer finally spoke up. He had stayed silent for decades, carrying the memory like a weight. "I think she might have been onto something," he said quietly. His hands trembled slightly as he fiddled with a pen. "Something dangerous, maybe corruption, maybe people inside the department. She mentioned odd cases, suspicious activity. I didn't realize how serious it was at the time." Detectives leaned in, taking notes. They pressed for details, asking which cases, which people, what she had discovered. He shook his head. "I didn't know then. I was young. I trusted her. I thought she was just diligent, maybe overthinking. But now it seems she stumbled onto something that someone didn't want revealed." The room grew quiet. For 26 years, the department had been haunted by a missing rookie, but now a new layer emerged. The possibility that she had been silenced for knowing too much. Files were pulled. Old case reports were reviewed again with this revelation in mind. The idea that someone inside the department might have been involved changed everything. It reframed her disappearance not as a random act, but as something calculated. Detectives realized the rookie officer had been brave in ways they hadn't fully appreciated. She had been chasing the truth, confronting danger head-on, and now, decades later, her diligence might finally explain why she vanished. A local man, now in his 60s, was interviewed after decades of silence. His memory was faint, but certain details stood out. "I was walking near the woods that night," he said. "I saw her struggling with a man. I couldn't tell who it was. It happened so fast. She was fighting, arguing. I thought maybe it was a fight over money or a personal issue. Then she disappeared into the darkness." The detectives pressed for more, but his recollection was limited. Faces were blurry, the night was dark, and the forest had hidden the details. Still, his account confirmed something terrifying. The officer may have confronted someone the night she vanished. She hadn't just disappeared. She had been involved in a dangerous encounter. The testimony added urgency to the investigation. It matched the possibility raised by the retired colleague. She might have uncovered corruption or criminal activity that made her a target. Detectives now had a new perspective. She hadn't vanished by accident. She hadn't run away. She had faced danger and someone had acted to silence her. The case, cold for decades, was gaining focus. The puzzle pieces were slowly aligning, and a clearer, darker picture of that night began to emerge. As detectives pieced together new information, motives began to shift. Was it revenge? Perhaps she had confronted a criminal suspect years ago, and someone sought retribution. The idea that the disappearance could be a calculated act sent chills through the department. Or was it a cover-up? The retired colleague's confession suggested corruption inside the force itself. Had she discovered illegal activity and been silenced before she could report it? Some officers had been compromised, and now the pieces fit a terrifying pattern. Some began to consider something more personal. Could someone have harbored a grudge, resentment, or anger toward her? Perhaps a jealous former partner or someone she confronted during patrol had acted out of fury. Detectives examined every lead with renewed urgency. Old files, witness statements, and the recovered gun were now interpreted through the lens of motive. Every suspect, past and present, was evaluated not just for opportunity, but for reason. Theories multiplied, each more plausible and more frightening than the last. One thing became clear: her disappearance was not random. She had been targeted. She had been hunted. And for 26 years, the truth had been buried along with the weapon. The investigation had shifted from searching for a missing officer to uncovering the actions of someone who had acted to hide their crime. News of the gun and reopened investigation spread quickly. The community felt the weight of the case again. Local media returned, cameras and microphones crowding streets and doorways. Reporters asked the same questions families had been asking for decades. Who did this? Why? Could she finally be found? Families who remembered her as a young rookie followed every update with nervous anticipation. Old neighbors, former colleagues, and even newcomers felt the tension. Fear lingered. People whispered that the killer might still be alive, still walking among them. Officers worked quietly but urgently, knowing that one wrong step could mean the suspect vanished again. The town held its breath. 26 years of silence had ended, replaced by pressure, questions, and suspense. Everyone wanted the truth, but the truth came with danger. Detectives felt it too. Every lead carried risk. Every interview could reveal something long hidden, but the case had to be solved. The rookie officer deserved justice. The town watched, waited, and hoped. The investigation had been moving cautiously, piecing together decades-old evidence and new witness statements. Then, a breakthrough appeared in the records. The serial number of the recovered gun traced back to one officer, a man who had once patrolled alongside the missing rookie. His name had been in the files from 1977, but at the time, he had never been considered a serious suspect. Detectives pulled his file. It contained small details that now looked suspicious. Reports of unusual behavior, complaints about excessive force, and unexplained absences during shifts all jumped off the page. His colleagues had written him off as difficult, but now it painted a darker picture. They discovered he had access to her service weapon. He had been close enough to know her routines, her patrol patterns, and the cases she was investigating. The gun buried in the woods could very well have been his doing. Questions filled the room. Had he acted alone? Had someone else been involved? Did he know she was getting too close to discovering his secrets? Detectives began mapping his history alongside hers. Patterns emerged. Places he frequented matched areas she had patrolled. Witness statements, once scattered, now aligned in a way that pointed directly toward him. Every detail, every file, every faded note from 1977 now carried weight. The rookie officer had confronted danger not from a stranger, but from someone she had trusted in uniform. The realization sent chills through the team. The mystery, cold for 26 years, now had a face attached to it. Every officer in the room understood the gravity of the moment. A former colleague, once a partner, could have been the one who ended her life. Detectives prepared to dig deeper. Interviews, forensic testing, and old timelines would all focus on him. The truth was finally within reach, and the story that had haunted a town for more than 2 decades was about to explode. As detectives dug into the former officer's history, troubling patterns emerged. Records from the late 1970s showed he had been suspected of corruption. Complaints from citizens, reports of unexplained behavior, and whispers of deals with local criminals all painted a dark picture. At the time, nothing had been proven, and he had never been charged. Investigators had chalked it up to rumors or lack of evidence. Now, decades later, those cracks in his past took on new meaning. He had the access, the knowledge, and the opportunity to silence someone who threatened to expose him. The detectives traced every connection he had with the community. Small-time criminals, questionable transactions, and strange absences all lined up with her last days on the force. The rookie officer had been diligent, asking questions, following leads. She had seen things others ignored. Even fellow officers who had worked with him in the past recalled moments that had seemed insignificant at the time. His temper, his evasiveness, his insistence on keeping certain files hidden. None of it had been enough for a conviction then, but now, with the gun and new witness statements, it all pointed toward him. Detectives reviewed the old patrol schedules. He had been in the same areas she had been. He knew her routines. He knew her weaknesses, and he had the motive to act if she discovered something he wanted kept secret. Every small detail from the files that had been dismissed decades ago now had weight. They no longer saw just a missing officer. They saw a potential crime planned and executed by someone in a position of trust. The case was no longer a cold mystery. It was a story of betrayal, secrecy, and calculated danger. The cracks in his past had widened into a trail pointing directly to the man who had once stood beside her in uniform. As detectives pieced together the timeline, a chilling realization emerged. The rookie officer hadn't simply vanished by chance. She had discovered something. Evidence suggested that in her early weeks on the force, she began noticing irregularities. Reports didn't add up, transactions were unaccounted for, and a few cases had suspicious outcomes. She had started asking questions, quietly gathering details, building a picture that someone did not want revealed. The day she disappeared, her patrol route, the traffic stop, and the abandoned car all aligned with her investigating something dangerous. Forensic teams confirmed her gun had been buried nearby, but not in a place she would have gone randomly. The location suggested she had been close to uncovering the truth. Witness statements indicated she may have confronted someone the night she vanished. She was brave, determined, and meticulous. Whatever she found, it was serious enough to put her in immediate danger. Investigators now saw the rookie not as a victim caught by chance, but as someone actively seeking justice. She had been piecing together a puzzle that led directly to her partner, someone she had trusted, someone she respected, someone who had been hiding criminal activity within the department. The files, combined with new witness testimony, painted a terrifying picture. She had been on the verge of exposing corruption, and someone had acted swiftly to stop her. The town's missing officer was no longer just a cold case. She was a hero who had confronted wrongdoing, only to pay the ultimate price. The evidence made one thing clear. Her disappearance had been a deliberate act to silence her, not an accident or random crime. Detectives felt the weight of the moment. For the first time, the story of her last night made sense. Every clue, every lead, every detail pointed to a confrontation that ended in murder. And now, after 26 years, the truth was finally coming to light. Detectives reconstructed the night of her disappearance using witness statements, patrol logs, and old case files. The picture that emerged was terrifying. She had confronted him during her patrol. Something she had discovered, evidence of corruption, shady deals, or a cover-up, was too serious to ignore. She wanted answers, and she wasn't afraid to challenge someone she had once trusted. The encounter began quietly, officers reconstructed. Words were exchanged, tense and firm. She demanded explanations. He tried to deflect, grow defensive, and calm the situation. But the rookie officer was determined, persistent. She would not back down. What started as an argument escalated quickly. The confrontation became physical. Struggles were witnessed faintly by someone passing near the woods. The details were fuzzy, but the effort to subdue her was clear. In the chaos, she was overpowered. The person she had trusted, someone in uniform, acted to silence her. Every movement was deliberate. Panic, fear, and a desire to hide the truth drove the actions that followed. After the struggle, he buried her body in a secluded spot nearby. Her service gun, removed during the encounter, was hidden separately, waiting for someone to find it decades later. For 26 years, the town believed she had vanished without explanation. Now, The timeline of her final moments revealed the brutal reality. She had been silenced because of her courage and her insistence on seeking the truth. Detectives felt the weight of decades fall upon them. Every file, every interview, every piece of evidence finally made sense. Her bravery had put her in danger, and someone she had trusted had exploited that trust to commit murder. The reconstructed confrontation was horrifying but crucial. It explained the missing years, the cold case, and the buried weapon. Finally, the rookie officer's last act, her relentless pursuit of justice, could be understood, honored, and remembered. With the reconstructed timeline, investigators reached a grim conclusion. The rookie officer had been killed that night. All evidence pointed to the same person, the former colleague she had confronted. He had acted deliberately, using his knowledge of the forest, the patrol routes, and her habits to control the situation. She had struggled, tried to escape, but he was stronger, prepared, and determined. The confrontation turned fatal in moments that would have felt like hours to her. Once she was dead, he faced a choice: leave the evidence or hide it. He chose meticulously. Her body was buried deep in the woods, far from the patrol car, hidden beneath layers of dirt, roots, and fallen leaves. The gun, her service weapon, was separated from the scene entirely. Buried elsewhere, it would remain a mystery for decades. It was a calculated move: leave some traces, mislead investigators, and buy himself years of anonymity. For 26 years, the town, her family, and her colleagues had searched, hoped, and mourned without answers. Every dead end, every rumor, every mistaken tip was part of a deliberate cover-up created in the first moments of that night. Investigators now had a full picture. She had been silenced forever, not randomly, not by chance, but because she had sought the truth. Her determination, her courage, and her dedication to justice had put her directly in the path of a murderer who had hidden behind a badge. The knowledge was painful but necessary. The rookie officer's story, lost in silence for decades, could finally be told accurately. She had been a hero, confronted corruption, and paid the ultimate price. Her family, the department, and the town would never forget. The case, cold for 26 years, now had clarity. The weapon's discovery, the witnesses, the files, they all converged to reveal the final, devastating truth. Years after the gun was found, investigators finally had enough evidence to move forward. Advances in forensics, combined with decades of witness statements, created a clear link to the former officer. DNA, previously untestable, now matched traces recovered from the scene. It confirmed what detectives had long suspected: he had been present that night. Every interview, every tip, every pattern of behavior lined up. The pieces fit together. Prosecutors prepared charges. The man who had once walked beside the rookie officer now faced the consequences of decades of secrecy. He was accused of murder, obstruction, and covering up a crime he had carried out with deliberate planning. The arrest itself was quiet but tense. Officers approached carefully, aware of the public attention and the historical weight of the case. He was taken into custody without incident, but the atmosphere was heavy with the gravity of the moment. For the town, the family, and the department, it was surreal. 26 years of uncertainty, fear, and sorrow had led to this one act: justice finally catching up. The man who had hidden behind a badge for so long was exposed. His secret life, the corruption, the cover-up, and the murder could no longer be concealed. Every effort to mislead investigators had failed in the end. Technology, persistence, and truth had overcome decades of deception. The family, still mourning but relieved, could finally see accountability. Investigators, some long retired, felt the weight of closure settling in. A cold case, once a haunting mystery, was now moving toward resolution. The rookie officer's courage had endured beyond the years she was denied. Her pursuit of justice had triggered a chain of events that eventually brought her killer to face the law. The arrest marked the beginning of the final chapter. For 26 years, the town had lived with questions, fear, and rumors. Now, the darkness surrounding that night was finally being brought into the light. Her story, once lost in silence, now carried the power to expose truth, ensure accountability, and honor her bravery. After the arrest, her parents were finally given the truth. For decades, they had lived in uncertainty, holding on to hope while fearing the worst. Now the answers came, bitter and undeniable. They wept openly, tears falling freely as they learned the details of her final moments. The bravery she had shown, the danger she faced, and the deliberate actions that ended her life were finally revealed. Relief washed over them, though it was tightly bound with grief. 26 years of unanswered questions, holidays spent hopping, and nights of silent worry could never be returned. They finally understood why their daughter had disappeared. Her courage, determination, and dedication had put her in harm's way, and the justice system had finally acknowledged her sacrifice. Friends, family, and former colleagues surrounded them, offering support. The weight of decades of uncertainty began to lift, replaced by a mixture of sorrow, pride, and relief. The parents knew they could now honor her memory openly. They could speak her name, share her story, and allow the town and department to remember her for the hero she had been, rather than only as the girl who vanished. For them, closure did not erase the pain, but it gave meaning to years of waiting. It allowed them to finally grieve fully, to process, and to begin moving forward with her legacy firmly in their hearts. The community, shaken for decades, finally had the truth. People came together to honor her courage and remember her as a fallen officer. Vigils were held in her name. Neighbors, colleagues, and citizens gathered with candles, sharing stories of her dedication and bravery. Each speech, each memory, reinforced that she had not been forgotten. The local police department established plaques and memorials in her honor. Her name was added to walls remembering officers who had died in the line of duty. Each symbol served as a reminder of her sacrifice and the cost of standing for justice. Schools, community centers, and local organizations shared her story. Young recruits learned of her determination and the dangers she faced, understanding the real-life stakes of the badge they carried. Even those who had only heard rumors or whispered tales came to grasp the full reality of what had happened. The rookie officer's life, once overshadowed by mystery, now became a lesson in courage, vigilance, and the importance of speaking truth to power. Her legacy lived not just in memorials, but in the awareness and respect her story inspired. The town, once haunted by fear and unanswered questions, now carried pride and remembrance in her name. Decades of silence had ended. Her bravery and commitment were no longer hidden. The story of the young officer who vanished, survived the passage of time, and ultimately led to justice, became a permanent part of the town's history. Through vigils, stories, and acts of honor, she remained present in the hearts of those who had known her and in the consciousness of the community she had served. Her memory endured, a symbol of courage that would never be forgotten. Even after the arrest, one fact haunted everyone. For 26 years, her killer had walked free. He had lived among the community, wearing a uniform once, respected by colleagues, trusted by neighbors. No one suspected the darkness hidden beneath his calm exterior. Meanwhile, her family had suffered silently. Holidays passed with empty chairs. Birthdays and milestones were shadowed by grief and unanswered questions. Every year without answers added layers of pain. The contrast was stark. He had freedom, a life, a facade of normalcy. They had decades of mourning, uncertainty, and longing for closure. The injustice was raw, almost unbearable. Detectives reflected on how carefully he had covered his tracks. The buried gun, the hidden body, the misleading clues, all planned to delay discovery. His careful manipulation had stolen more than a life. It had stolen decades of peace from those who loved her. Even now, with justice finally moving forward, the chilling thought lingered. Someone capable of such violence had blended into everyday life for over 2 decades, unnoticed. It was a sobering reminder of how danger can hide in plain sight. The town remembered her courage, her commitment, and the ultimate price she had paid. But the shadow of those years of deceit could never fully be erased. Her story became a lesson, a warning, and a tribute. Courage and justice eventually prevailed, but the cost was heavy. Her legacy endured through the community's memory, the department's acknowledgement, and the story passed down to every new recruit. Even as closure arrived for her family, the haunting reality remained. A young rookie officer had been taken too soon, silenced by someone she trusted, and for a quarter century, her killer had moved freely among those who had loved and respected her. The story ended with that stark, chilling truth, a reminder that bravery can demand everything, and that justice, no matter how delayed, must eventually be served.